Welcome back to the Transplaning Podcast. My name is Bear, joined by the lovely Daphne.
If I can hit the button. Okay, let's just be totally clear here. Today has been just a wild day. I don't know what else to say about it. Anyway, that's also why I'm not wearing earrings.
No, you don't have
I'm not
cute
wearing
earrings
earrings.
today.
No, because I was just like, my brain is absent. Everything's just screwed over. No earrings today. Okay, today we have Marus. Marus reached out to us. They explained that they're a trans man, playwright, poet, and a single parent of 3 teenagers. So, Marus, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Right on.
Yeah, of course. This is a really interesting one for us. We have not had that many trans men on the podcast.
No.
We've had 2 so far, and anyway, we've had 2 so far, and then on top of it, like being a playwright, a poet, like this is a lot of different stuff that we've just never had a whole lot of conversation about. So what I think we'd like to start off with is let's start off with your story, if you're okay with that, and then we'll just kind of work through everything.
All right, that sounds good. While we were testing audios and things, I was reading from a spoken word piece that I wrote about my transition and how I got to where I am today. Like a lot of people my age, I have a lot of suppressed issues with my identity. I didn't really grow up feeling like I was a boy, but I did grow up feeling like I didn't fit in the gender box that I had been assigned. And it always felt like I was trying really hard to fit something that didn't come naturally. When my middle child, my oldest daughter, was born, I said that she taught me how to be a girl. I had no idea. In fact, when she was born, I looked at my then partner and said, I don't know how. I don't know how to raise a girl. Raising a boy, my oldest, who was about 2 years older than her, was a boy. And I found him really easy. But looking at her and going, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know. And she is one of those children who just has a really strong innate sense of who she is and her identity and her gender and everything. And she knew before she was a year old that she was a girl. So it was really revealing to see this tiny child who knew exactly who she was. And myself, by contrast, having no idea, even as a fully formed adult in my 30s at that point,
Yeah.
having no idea who I was, or even being able to access the language to try and figure out who I was.
This is interesting. This is interesting, right? Because we hear a lot of people talk about, when you're a kid, everybody knows, and being trans is something that's programmed into us. So this is interesting, hearing that you have a kid that had just this innate sense of who they were, but then having you on the contrast with it, like that just in my head, this shows a difference with it that not everybody knows when they're a kid. This isn't something that was programmed as a teenager and worked into it. This is you knew as a kid.
I knew, like I said, I knew that I didn't fit the female gender binary.
Right.
But growing up as a preteen in the 80s and then teenager high school in the 90s, I didn't really have access to the internet until I was like a senior in high school. So it was a lot harder for me to even find that language as a young person. My parents are, I joke that they're fundamentalists without the religion. It's very weird to talk with survivors of fundamentalist backgrounds because all of the things that they talk about, I have in common with them. We have so many similar experiences in the ways that we're raised, the way that our parents are.
Yeah.
But I didn't grow up in a fundamentalist church. In fact, I grew up in a really progressive Lutheran church um, that was very open and welcoming and caring. It was an amazing place to be a child. But my parents weren't like that. My parents were really rigid and really high control and didn't. I had a lot of freedom in some ways, but in other ways I was really restricted and really prevented from exploring and developing that language for
Right.
who I am, because you're supposed to be a girl. Here's what we think a girl is. Now,
Sure.
So
cut off whatever bits.
was that like dresses? You know, you had to wear dresses because you're a girl, or was this it didn't matter being a tomboy?
It was very WASP. If you're familiar with like East Coast white Anglo-Saxon Protestant kind of WASP culture, that is very much what I was raised to be. So pretty long hair, not necessarily dresses, but know how to dress confidently and elegantly as a young woman, and just the manners and the behavior and the way of speaking and all of those things. And they really didn't care what parts of me I cut off along the way to fit in that box, because the important part was that I fit into that box. Part of the reason that I partnered up with somebody and had kids was because part of that entire socialization was, you are not really an adult woman
Right.
until you are married and you have kids. And I wasn't really sure about the getting married part, and I really wasn't sure about the having kids part, but this was the expectation within my family tree, that you find somebody who is the opposite gender from you,
Yeah.
and you have kids. And I did that, and I forced myself into the box. And then my partner died, very unexpectedly.
Oh, wow.
He got the flu. I took him to a hospital thinking he was going to get some medication and be home in a couple of hours. 3 weeks later, he passed away in ICU.
Oh, my God.
And that basically felt like, if this can happen so unexpectedly in my life, what else can I challenge? What else can I not assume I can rely on to be true? He was older than me, so we had kids thinking, well, if we're done with having kids by the time he is 50, just looking at statistics, it's more than likely he'll see them graduate from high school. And instead, my youngest was a month away from turning 7 years old when he passed.
Jeez.
And that just, death shifts everything. Death turns everything on its axis. And I went to therapy for the first time in my life, and I started questioning and challenging everything I thought I knew. And about 3 years into therapy, we got to the point of, well, who am I actually? And that led to remembering that as a young high schooler, I had identified myself as pansexual, which I had forgotten about for 20 years. And then messing around with clothing and how I present myself, and going, okay, well, maybe I'm gender fluid. Maybe that works. And a year later, my therapist asked me a question about how the clothing experiment was going. I wrote,
The what
I
experience?
have not, the experience of experimenting with clothing and what
Okay.
things I wore, if I wasn't trying to conform to anyone else's expectation. And when she asked me that, I said, well, I haven't worn anything coded feminine in almost a year.
Yeah.
She's like, well, why don't we talk about that? And it still took about another year for me to come out as a trans man. Actually, it's interesting that we're recording this today, because a year ago today was the day that I came out kind of officially to my social media.
Yay!
It was really, when you said this was one of the dates available, I was like, oh, that's a cool one.
That is neat. That's super neat, super special. So I the question that pops into my head is something. I had a question and then I got distracted by the ear. Congratulations on that, by the way. Oh! I remember. So you hadn't worn women's. We'll go with women's. You haven't worn femme clothing in a while, and you decided to start experimenting with. Did you say masculine clothing or?
The original behavior experiment that my therapist asked me to do was to simply get dressed every day for myself.
Okay.
Don't get dressed for anybody else's expectations or perceptions of who you are. Just
Right.
choose the clothing that you feel good in and that you want to wear. And that was all of my kind of androgynous things. That was the more masculine button-ups that I had at that point already, because office wear button-ups for women are horrible, and I already had a bunch of men's button-downs for my business casual job that I was in at the time. So yeah, I was just like, okay, I'll just, whatever feels good for me, not what other people expect me to wear, or what I think other people expect me to wear, which is a critical distinction.
Right.
And I kept on gravitating towards androgynous and towards men's clothing, and feeling really pissed off about it all the time, because clothing is clothing, right? Clothing is clothing, and there's no gender inherent to clothing. So every time I would wear things that made me feel good, there was this little internal dialogue of being really mad that this is the thing that feels so good, as opposed to that other thing that I keep looking at, that's a really pretty dress, but I don't feel like wearing it.
So there's a couple points in here that stick out to me. The first one being that as you started to go more into androgynous clothing, the first question that pops into my head is, how well was that accepted in your community around you?
Where I live is really, really interesting. I live in a city that has a reputation for being very conservative. We had a really high-profile hate crime a couple of years ago. The Pub Q shooting happened in my community. Actually, the year that I moved back to the city. So it is not a city that is fully open, fully welcoming. But it is a city that is more progressive and more open than it was when I moved here. I've lived here since 2007.
Okay.
And it has become a more comfortable place over that time. Good.
So
my social circle was already pretty queer before I started behavior experiments and trying to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
So within my social circles, the changes I made really didn't draw any attention.
Right.
Because everybody in my social circle was also experimenting with things and trying things out, and even if they felt pretty settled in where they are and their identity that they've got through these periods of experimentation themselves. So everybody that I knew personally already was pretty comfortable with the idea. My kids' schools have been the most challenging, the most interesting, because it's a lot harder for an adult who's responsible for picking up their kids to be fluid in how they present and how they are known in the school, because of necessary security issues around who is picking up which children for what reasons.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, but that's not something that's on profile, right? There's not like a photo on profile for that?
Actually, yes, they run your ID. When you come into the school to have a meeting, and two of my kids are on IEPs, so I am physical, so I have to go actually into the controlled parts of the school for meetings with teachers and so on. They run your ID and they print out a sticky badge for you that has
Yeah.
your photo from your official ID on it and your name as known on your ID. And there's no way to say, hey, I'd rather that you printed my badge with initials on it or with a different name on it, because
Right.
all of it has to match. So some of those things have been a little bit awkward, but the staff, that's like an administrative programming issue, right? The staff at their schools have been really welcoming and really open. And when I interact one-on-one, go talk to the social worker about something, talk to the counselors about, hey, my kid's having an issue with this.
Yeah.
In those kinds of one-on-one situations, they've been really, really good and have remembered name, have remembered pronouns, things like
Right.
that. So socially, I didn't have any issues whatsoever. School at the big picture level, there's been some awkwardness, but
Right.
on a one-on-one level, not at all.
So this is
So I've been really surprised and really impressed. Given the reputation of the city, I've been really impressed with how things have gone.
well, that's really nice that you've been having that success and that result coming from it. And the thought that popped into my head is that people make comments quite often that AFAB people, we'll go with that, AFAB people tend to have an easier social transition because, and maybe this isn't fair. If it's not fair, please tell me, okay? maybe it's not fair, but it's, you can, we're not in the day where I'm going to say women have to wear dresses and men have to wear the slacks and the suit coats, and where going through a transition like that is such a big visible difference, right? And so people can grow up as a tomboy, and that's just a completely normal thing. And now even society's getting to a point where you see a lot of even femme people, women, where they have, shaved hair and different stuff like that. So even the long hair isn't a thing that's unheard of now. But all of this to say that I'm glad that that's gone easier for you. Not easier. That's not fair. Not easier. I'm glad that it's gone okay.
I have a counterpoint to how I feel internally versus how this actually works.
That's fair. I'd love to hear it.
I am almost always read as feminine, regardless of what I do. I wear a binder almost every day. Within state practices for wearing binders, but I wear a binder most days. I am a practicing Jew, so I usually have a yarmulke on. But when I go into Wendy's or I go to the library or places like that, I am always a man, all the time, consistently. Anywhere I go in the city, it's have a good day, ma'am.
Oh no, that's not cool.
I was at a store with a friend of mine who is AFAB, but they're non-binary. They identify as transmasculine. And we were both out and about yesterday. We were doing some shopping together. We were both presenting very, very masculine. And the cashier checked us out as, you have a good day, ladies. And we just looked at each other and started laughing.
I hate
because
that.
At that point, what can you do? This is somebody who's going to see 100 people during their shift. What can you do? So we just looked at each other and laughed and went on our way.
In this case, I sound completely corrected, and and that's okay. I mean, this is the point of the podcast is to hear this stuff.
Yeah, that's why we ask the questions, and that's why we're here to learn too.
Yeah, by no means are we experts.
No,
we are not experts.
No, not one time.
Yeah, so this is great to hear this side of it. Like this is why we put the podcast together is for these kind of instances. The second point, if I can't dig myself a different hole to be buried in here, the second part of what you had mentioned earlier, I found to be actually really affirming, right? Is you said that clothing isn't gendered, right? And I love that because it offers the freedom for people to wear whatever makes them comfortable. They're not bound by a social characteristic.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it brings me back to a previous episode, with Ramses and explaining just, they wear what they want to wear, and it's both masculine and feminine, and yeah, whatever's comfortable, for the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I lost the part in the story where we were. Oh, we were talking about clothing.
Talking about clothing.
You were becoming more, wearing more androgynous clothing and feeling what felt right for you.
And androgyny very quickly morphed into dressing like one of the male characters out of the TV show Mad Men. I basically walk around looking like a 1950s ad executive at this point in my life. This is very casual for me. But button downs and suspenders and nice slacks are my usual uniform. And I'm sure it reads as grotesquely uncomfortable to a lot of men, but I really enjoy it, and it feels good and comfortable for me. So
I love
what I do.
that. I love that so much. And yeah, that's another reason we have the podcast, is to help people see that there's, they can be affirmed.
Yeah.
And clothing's a very real way to feel affirmed. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's interesting having teenagers and going through this transition, because at various points in the last few years, I've helped my girls figure out how to dress for various things. But also, I have helped my son dress for formal events. And he'll come to me with his trousers and his shirt that he's planning to wear, and I'll duck into my closet and hand him a waistcoat or a tie or whatever, and be like, here, wear this also. And it's been a lot of fun to not just be able to help my daughters, but to be able to help him out too.
I totally see you like wearing, fancy, dress shirt, whatever, and a vest. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yes, I have all the pieces, and this is a
Bow
really
tie.
funny little aside. I have not learned how to tie a bow tie yet. I
It's
can
hard.
tie a full Windsor knot. I can tie a full Windsor knot without looking.
There you
but
go.
I cannot tie a bow tie.
Next up,
Very
you got to
funny.
learn the double Windsor.
Double Windsor and full Windsor are the same thing. They just have slightly different terminology depending on if you're talking to somebody from the UK or the US.
That's
Fair enough.
I have learned I've learned so many tiny little how to dress yourself tips from the weirdest source, and every time I run into one, just like this is ridiculous. I have learned a lot about how to dress myself as a man from reading fan fiction, which is so funny. Every time I find out about something, this is weird. But things like, I read a story a couple of years ago that involved a male character who's dressing really formal for an event, and he's putting on shirt stays. I was like, what is that? Well, it turns out they're like garters for your shirt that keep your shirt hooked into your pants. But I've learned a lot of things like that, where it's some person who's writing a story. It's like, oh, I know this weird little esoteric thing about how men dress, or how women dress, depending on what you're reading. And what is this thing that they're talking about? Oh, that's really useful. I could use that. A lot of trans men have trouble keeping their binders from rolling off across their stomach. And these shirt stays are really, really good for keeping their binder in place.
Wait, what did it...
All the time.
Wait, I have to ask again, what is helping them stay? Because what I just heard is the shit stains are helping them stay.
Okay, so binders for trans men come in either a half length that looks kind of like a sports bra,
Okay.
or they come in a full length, like a really tight fitting tank top.
Right.
Full length binders have a tendency to roll up across your belly as you move throughout the day.
So does my tank top.
But shirts Right. Shirt stays are like,
Oh,
they're like
shirt
reverse
stains.
garter belts. Stays,
Stays.
Shirt
S-T-A-Y-S,
stays.
shirt, yes. They clip around your thigh, and then they have little straps on them that you clip onto the bottom of your shirt. And they keep everything tucked down nice in your pants.
See, the only
And
thing
I
with
found out about,
the only thing with my tank top is I go stay and then it doesn't. So that's at least you have a different stay than I do.
yes.
At the end of the day, I'm like a hotel. Checking out whatever. You're like, hey, so how was your stay?
And I'm over here. I just wear t-shirts.
Right, right.
I just wear t-shirts.
In some of the trans masculine groups that I follow on social media, um, figuring out how to dress yourself is a challenge, whether you're a trans woman, trans man,
Yes,
somewhere in the middle. Figuring out how to dress yourself is a challenge.
that's fair.
And every time some poor young boy comes in going, I don't know what to wear, I have to remind myself, no, wait, you dress like a 1950s man. You need to sit on your hands.
Comes out with the Tommy gun. Hey,
Exactly.
hey, yeah, Bubba.
Don't forget the cannoli. Don't forget the cannoli.
Joey says you has a problem.
Exactly.
I got one more question. I want to know what the most affirming thing has been over the last year. As you've been exploring all of this, what has been the most affirming thing for you?
There's been a lot of really good ones. But I think the one that I enjoy the most is one that happened just a few weeks ago and involved my youngest, who is now 13. Where I pick her up from school, she can see me as she's coming down the stairs, which means that all of her classmates can see me as well. And I found out that there had been several weeks of speculation amongst her classmates about who the man was who was picking her up from school every day. And her classmates went through basically all of the possibilities, except for landing on the fact that I am her primary parent, including some speculation that I was her stepdad, which was very entertaining to me. But at the end of it, she kind of flipped her hair back and she goes, so I guess you pass at a distance.
At a distance.
Like, like it doesn't really count, but we'll say that you do.
At a distance.
That one gave me a good laugh for a few days.
I will go the distance. The kids will know the way. I will find my way one button at a time. Okay, so you were talking about you had been going through books and fan fiction, right? And you talked about that, and I thought that was just a really good segue to kind of lean over into being a playwright and poet. I don't even understand what the difference is between the two. Do you want to kind of explain that for someone as dumb as me?
Sure. So within people who write scripts for media, there are playwrights who write plays for live theater, for the stage, and there are screenwriters who write for television and film. Television is interesting to me. I haven't really done anything in that area. Mostly I write for the stage. I write live theater, so I'm a playwright rather than a screenwriter. I also make poetry. I do have traditional short form poetry like haikus, things like that. I also do spoken word. I've done some competitive slam style stuff, which is a lot of fun.
Yes, yes. We are freestyling over here. We are.
And
This makes me so happy.
and I try to write novels. I'm a terrible novelist. That's why I write fan fiction, is because I'm trying to be better at writing narrative storytelling. I'm really, really good at dialogue, and I'm really, really good at finding an emotional point in to focus on, which is what you do with spoken word and even with a lot of short form poetry, is finding a really small emotional thing to focus on for 3 lines or 5 lines or 3 minutes if you're
Yeah.
doing competitive slam. But I'm really, really terrible at writing 3 paragraphs about what is happening in a room with these characters and their emotions and their reactions to each other. So I write fan fiction to improve those skills because they are necessary, important skills to have as a writer. But mostly I write plays and poetry. And most of it, even going back to before I realized I was queer, before I started transitioning, go back a decade in my writing, I was already writing queer themes. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was already writing queer themes at that point.
So is there like a specific theme, I guess, with the playwrights? Like you're writing slam Broadways?
Slam.
Yeah.
That is actually something I really would love to do sometime. Okay, so in my defense, Hamilton started as a hip hop album,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So why couldn't there be a kind of a musical style piece of theater that was based on slang poetry?
I'm picturing like a queer slam, where you got all the different genders battling each other.
Six women battling for an hour. All of the pieces are there. One of my favorite musicals is called Come From Away. It's based on a true story that happened during the events right after 9/11.
Right.
But I was listening to the creators talk about it, and they're like, well, we knew we could set up the play the way that we did because this musical had already done these elements, and this other musical had already done these elements. And they pulled ideas for how they were going to present their story from like 4 or 5 different musicals. So when I say, well, Hamilton already did this and Six has done that, so all the pieces are there to set up that kind of a slam type musical.
There you go.
It's just figuring out how to do it and putting it all together. And right now in my Google Docs, I've got 8 tabs open right now. So
I get that so hard.
I thought I don't need to be doing any more new projects right this minute.
So you just started off going, hey, so you think I'm a woman, but you don't understand I've been taking testosterone and I am a man. And just start running with it.
On a personal level, that would be a lie. I am pre-medical.
Oh, fair enough. I was just offering an option.
Absolutely. Oh, of course. I don't. I do a lot of writing for competitions and festivals, so
Yeah.
a lot of the plays that I write have thematic elements that a festival organizer asked for. So it's always kind of interesting seeing how I will take that theme or that guideline or that prompt, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and using it from my perspective. And intentionally or not, I end up writing a lot of queer and transgender themes, even when probably that's not exactly what the contest is looking for. I don't get selected I don't win very often. I don't get selected very often. Probably because I am perceived as very political in my writing.
Well, when you're at the pumpkin chucking contest, it's probably not the place where they want all the LGBT stuff.
Exactly. But I do enjoy it though because you get something like Waiting for Joy was a contest I did earlier this year. And weaving in the idea of a older teenager who is counting down the days until they're 18 and they can access hormone therapy.
Yeah.
Is one of the pieces that I did. I am sure that's not what the contest organizers were looking for, but it was a really wonderful piece to write. And that is a large part of the reason why I follow the contest and festival circuit, is because even though I'm not going to win very often, I get a lot of really good ideas. I get a lot. I get so many prompts that would never come to my mind if I was just sitting here looking at a computer screen, going, "Oh, what should I write today?"
Right.
Instead, I've got a spreadsheet of, "Hey, write something about this, and write something about that, and you need 6 pages on this theme or 8 pages on that."
That's fair. Do you
Because
find
a lot of festivals are based on time limits. A lot of them are like 10 minutes, like a minute play.
Mm.
And in manuscript format, that's about 8 pages usually. So I can write 8 pages on whatever you want me to write about. That'll be fun.
That's better than me.
Something else.
That's better. That's better than me. I find that, like, so I write a lot of music, but when I write the music, it's usually I'm feeling some really intense feelings, and so I just put the intense feelings into that, and that gives me a way to get those feelings out. Do you find that that's something that you incorporate into your work, where you're feeling these big feelings and you go, "Here, let me put it out on paper"?
That's what slam poetry is for. When I'm feeling the really intense stuff, that's when I write slam poetry.
Next time you do it, I want a copy. I want I want to hear it. Actually, would you mind? Do you happen to have one that you wouldn't mind sharing? If you don't, that's fair. But I want to hear you slam.
Yeah.
Oh no, we're gonna do something fun.
Let's do it.
Down here at the pumpkin chug, and everybody wants to go and be riding in the truck and
Okay, let's see if
I don't know.
Give me just a second to pull this up.
Yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Where I wanted to. This is a really fun one. I've done this a couple of times for competition. It is called Go Fishing.
Go fish.
Go fishing for a fish and ask yourself, what makes a fish a fish? Is it scales, fins, how they breathe, what they eat, how they reproduce? Because as any marine biologist worth their student loans can find you at least one exception to any of those essential characteristics. What makes a flower or fruit? Because botanists have the same argument about the essential characteristics of plants that marine biologists have about fish. Or ask yourself that most fundamental of questions when you glance out your window in the morning: what makes a small brown bird, a sparrow, a finch, or a wren? Nobody knows. Not even your friendly neighborhood ornithologist. And if somewhere in the last few lines you thought to yourself, "Oh, I think this is a metaphor," you'd be right. Because the more strictly we try to define any existing life form here on Earth, the more exceptions to the rules we have to write. So when you realize that if you define a fish by its scales, but understand that fish with leather-like skin are also fish, and creatures with fins are not necessarily all fish, and yet some most assuredly are fish, and so on down the line of essential fish characteristics, then it shouldn't be too difficult to recognize that some men and some women have more biological characteristics in common with each other than they have differences.
Boom.
If, to use a highly reductive example, you define a woman as being able to carry a pregnancy and nurse her infant, then what of the woman who's had these essential biological characteristics removed due to cancer risk? Is she still a woman? More than likely, her resounding answer is yes, of course, because her identity as a woman exists in her head rather than in the parts of her body she does or does not carry about in the world. And if, for another example, you define a man as having an excess of body hair and a tendency to send unsolicited eggplant pics at a moment's notice, well, you haven't met me yet, have you? So the fish knows it's a damn fish, regardless of if it follows the nebulous rules of fish definition or not. And it goes without saying that a woman is a woman because she knows she's a woman, and a man is a man for the same reason. And people who are genderqueer and fluid and non-binary know they are neither and all and none of the above in the same way that a fish knows what it means to be a fish. So if I walk up to you at Icons one night and say, "Hi, I'm Marus. I have a big mouth and a small eggplant. Want to come home with me?" who are you going to believe?
Well, last week we learned it was the gay
Wow.
fish. And that's what we discovered. It's the gay fish.
Gay fish.
Bear claps. He says you're amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See, that's way different than I thought
That
it was
was-
gonna be. It was way different than I thought it was
This
gonna
still
be.
flowed so good.
It did. It did. It flowed so well.
Mhm.
See, I thought it was going to be something along the lines of like, I don't know. You flow through the river and you flow through the cities. Everyone looks at you, but you got tiny titties, and I don't know. I just. I don't know. That's my slam.
Booble.com. Booble.
Lowercase because they're tiny. Anyway, okay, so here's the thing. Please don't look up Booble. We tested this today, okay? So there is a story behind this. Okay? When I was 16, okay, Google was just becoming like a really big thing, and Buddy comes over to the house. Or it wasn't the house, it was a store that we had. Anyway, Buddy comes over and he's like, "Hey, check this out." And he pulls it up, Booble.com, you know? And at the time, if you remember, Google was like a G, and there was like O-O-O-O-O-O-G-L-E, right? And so he's like, "Check this out." And you go to Booble.com, and it was B-B-L-E. And we thought that was like the coolest thing, you know? And we laughed so hard about it. And anyway, I don't know. A while later, I was like, "Hey, I got this," you know, and I pull it up. I was like, "Remember this?" And I go, Booble.com. It loads, and my mom comes around the corner right then. She's like, "What are you looking at, Daphne?" Don't go look up Booble.com.
Don't.
We checked it out today, and it is not the same thing.
Yeah, we looked it up. Yeah, we looked it up, so you don't have to.
Yes, it's not at all. It's
It's not the
everything that you
same.
think it would
It's not
be,
the
and not
same.
at all the same. Anyway,
Very
after that sidetrack, so you made a comment that you hadn't started any kind of medical transition, and I don't want to get into anything too personal if you don't want to get into it, but is hormones something that you think you might do at some point?
I keep going back and forth on this. It's an interesting and ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
I don't have like the classic presentation of dysphoria where it is unrelenting and it's always in the back of your head.
Yeah.
I have a intermittent form that's really tied to hormone cycles, honestly. So there's 3 or 4 days usually in any given 4-week stretch where it's really, really bad. And then it kind of fades into the background, and it's the dysphoria is there a little bit, but it's not really persistent in the way that it is for a lot of transgender
Yeah.
people. So most of the time, and my friends who certainly listen to this will know the caveat on this, but most of the time, hormones don't feel like a necessity for me.
Yeah.
My priority right now is top surgery. I really, really hate wearing a binder,
Yeah.
but it really impacts the way that I am perceived and how I feel about myself, and that's a really big priority for me,
Yeah.
is getting that surgery. And what I've talked about with my therapist is I think I want to do top surgery, and I think I want to get that time to heal and really get settled into myself and give it 6 to 12 months, and then come back to the idea of hormones and see
Yeah.
if it still feels like something that I want, or if it's maybe not as much of a priority for me. That's partly based on my time of life. I'm in my late 40s. In terms of AFAB hormone cycles, things are all really winding down anyway.
Right.
So it just doesn't feel like, I think if I was in my 20s, I would probably feel really, really different.
I mean, yeah, and
But,
you have to do what's right for you.
right. And I've also had interactions with people who knew me before I started transitioning. We hadn't seen each other for a while, who just in the way that I present myself out in the world, and the way that your physicality changes when you know who you are. People who have been absolutely convinced that I had already started hormones and were really, really surprised. I said, no, I haven't done anything medical at all yet. It's all social transition. Um, I think that therapy makes a big difference for me. I
Yeah.
think that being really, really confident in myself and who I am, um, makes a big difference. But I would love to not have the chest that reads as AFAB and
Yeah.
and not
Sure.
have fibers and all of that.
Well,
So that's my priority.
and I think it's important to note that not having hormones doesn't make you any less of a man. You know, that
Right.
being said, I've been on
Right.
hormones for 3 years, and before that, they were regular moans.
Yeah. Yes. My girlfriend's been on hormones for about 3 years also. So you guys are twinsies.
Poor bear. Sometimes Bear hates being around me.
I just live here.
So I was going to ask you. I don't know what state you're living in, and if you don't want to share it, that's fine. But if you were to decide to go onto hormones, do you think that because hormones is actually something that's really highly talked about right now? They're trying to ban hormones, and so is this something that you're worried about in the state you're in, that might not be an option here in the future?
I live in one of the better states. I'm not in one of the best states. I'm not in California or New York,
Right.
but I am in that second tier down. We have pretty good state level protections for
Yeah.
queer people overall. We have pretty good
Great.
protections for trans people more specifically.
Yeah.
Um, Access to medical care is better than average. People here are still able to get hormone treatment through our state Medicaid program, which is starting to shut down in a lot of places. But
Yeah.
so far here, people are still able to access that.
Yeah.
Um, it does play into my decision a little bit in the sense that, as we've talked about, I have teenagers and I have a responsibility to be a safe, stable family for them. And part of my hesitation on hormones right now is not drawing attention to myself.
Yeah.
Not putting things on my medical record that the federal government would be
Yeah.
interested in collecting and gathering. At the state level, I feel very, very
I
safe.
mean, regardless
I
of
feel
HIPAA laws, right?
Exactly. I mean, we've already seen them try to violate HIPAA on a number of different issues.
Yeah.
So at the state level, I feel very safe. But having an awareness of some of the things that the federal regime has tried to pull already,
Yeah.
there are things I just don't want on my medical record right now.
Right.
Top surgery, I'm not too worried about that because people get top surgery for lots and lots of different reasons. But hormones kind of codes you as really being specifically transgender. And if I can feel safe and comfortable and confident in my body, I'm going to hold off. I'm going to hold off until I've had surgery and wait and see what happens with the political environment.
Yeah.
That is not the safest decision for a lot of people. I know guys who probably would go into very, very dark mental places
Right.
if they were not on hormones. So that is me speaking for me as somebody who feels pretty safe and pretty stable in my body.
Well, and I
Definitely not.
imagine, I imagine that there, and maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's also the thought about what happens if I start hormones and then that gets taken away.
right. Also,
Hmm.
if I start and then after a couple of months or maybe a year of feeling good on hormones, that gets taken away. And I have friends, I have people in support groups who have started on hormones and then for various reasons had to stop. And that's almost more devastating than never going on hormones in the first place.
Right.
So
You get a patchy
for me, it's
beard.
been kind of, yeah. So
Get
it's
this shit.
it's a balance. It's a balance of a bunch of different issues of
Road
what
rash.
feels good for me, what is necessary to keep my family safe and intact, and all of
Yeah.
those things, all together. My sister made a comment when I was really struggling, like a year and a half ago, where I kind of knew that I probably was trans, but I really
Yeah.
did not want to say the word. I was really, really scared of the word. And I was wailing at her about how I was so tired of change, and
Right.
I wanted to stop. I just wanted to be stable for a while
As you change.
because right because it feels like since my partner died in 2019 that I've just been on this constant cycle of change over and over again. She goes,
Yeah.
but wouldn't it be more stabilizing if you knew the direction you were going and not just getting pulled back and forth by things that seem to come out of nowhere?
Yeah. Sometimes having that I was about to say solidarity, but that's not the right word. But stability, that's the right word. Sometimes having that stability
Yeah,
is a needed and
yeah,
necessary thing. Like when you go to transition, everything changes in your life, whether it be workplaces that you're working, religion and cultural differences that are happening. You have family relationships and everything changes, and sometimes that can be just a super overwhelming thing to have all of that change all at once, and so yeah, having a bit of stability probably it would be essential, it sounds like.
yeah, yeah. One of the things that is really interesting when I finally decided, okay, I'm going to name this. I'm going to put a name to this. I'm just going to say this is who I am instead of keeping it to myself. I was raised Christian. I converted to Judaism as a young adult. And about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, I was sitting in the biggest, most formal service of the entire Jewish calendar, going, oh, I've done this before. The transition is not a new thing. I've done this before. Because when you convert to Judaism, it's not say a prayer and yay, you're a Jew. There's a lot of study that goes into it. There's a lot of learning. Most people spend at least a year in formal study.
Right.
I spent 3 years studying on my own, and then I spent about a year and a half in formal study. So there's a lot of learning that goes into it, a lot of conversation with other people who are going through the same processes. You choose a Hebrew name that you use in religious ceremonies. Um, when you convert, you have to tell your family at some point, by the way, I'm going to do this thing. These are the impacts it's going to have on our larger social circle. So, realizing this time last year, in a sense, you've done this before. In a sense, you have transitioned before. You have chosen names before. You have studied. You have learned. You have gone through all these different things. You have communicated new information to your family. Suddenly made, I'm going to transition publicly. I'm going to transition socially. I'm going to share with other people what I know about myself. Made all of that really a lot less intimidating because I've done this before.
Yeah.
And I did it almost 2 decades ago now. And I've never changed my mind. There have been times when I've been less observant and more observant, but I've never changed my mind. Said, "Oh, I regret that, and I wish I hadn't done that." Um, I've
I don't
Apologies.
know what that was.
And
I don't know
I've
what it
been,
was.
I've been very comfortable and confident in my Jewish identity. I was like, well, if you can live that life as consistent and happily as you have for as many years as you have, then why are you scared of being public in your identity as a man?
Yeah.
Because you've done this before.
So that brings me into the next question. Why Judaism? Like, what was it that attracted you to it, and why did you decide to go that route?
When I met my partner, who was Jewish, and I invited myself along with him to a Friday night service one week just because I was curious and nosy, honestly. I had no
Yeah.
ulterior motives. I was just curious.
Right.
Um, I told the story for a long time afterwards. I told kind of this, the model of the Christian testimony story. I told kind of a version of that where I would talk about going into this community and the way I phrased that time was feeling God in a way I'd never experienced before.
Yeah.
Um, but what I had really found, looking back at that particular community, what I had found was a community that was a lot like the church that I grew up in, that was very liberal and open and progressive. I found this really socially aware, social justice oriented community. And it felt like home in the sense that it reminded me of that community I had when I was a child. Um, and what attracts me to Judaism more than a lot of other religions is the sense of the social group.
Yeah.
Um, it's not you standing alone in your faith in front of God. It's we are all in this together. There's a rabbinic proverb basically that a evil man is the man who dedicates his life to Torah and to study and does not participate in the social functions of his community. And
Yeah.
I think that that's a really profound idea, especially right now with the political things we have going on, that
Yeah.
we are strongly rooted in communities. So that idea of the community was really, very significant to me. And then the other thing that I learned very early on, and I wish I had stayed in touch with the woman who showed me this, is that you don't have to believe in the traditional idea of God to be faithful and reverent and to be a practicing member of the community.
Yeah.
That just being in this group and saying the prayers, even if they aren't talking to God, when you are saying them, even if you are not talking to God, that you are saying the same words that your ancestors, metaphorically or literally, have said for hundreds of years, that there is some kind of metaphysical connection to the whole of humanity in
Yeah.
doing that. And I find that really a lot more powerful than the idea of a monotheistic God. That there's these hard to define connections between us, and they go back and forth in time. And it's a connection to the past, but it's also a connection to who will come in the future. And those are the reasons that Judaism appeals to me a lot more than most of. I'm a religious studies nerd. I learned about them all when I was in college, and Judaism just really rang true for me in those ways a lot more than many of the other faiths that
Yeah.
I learned about and attended services and hung out with my friends and all of those things.
So the last question that I can think of right now
mm-hmm.
is you mentioned you get to pick out a Jewish name. Was I am blinking. So Marus, was Marus the Jewish name that you picked out, or
Oh,
if not,
no,
then
we
the
have a whole saga. We have a whole saga about names. So, my birth name and Marus. are functionally the same name. They have the same meanings. So my birth name was the feminine version, and Marus is the masculine version of the same name.
Right.
A lot of people don't do that. I did that because there's a piece of family history connected with my dead name that I had really hoped that I could hold on to in a way. It was a name that my grandfather suggested because one of the meanings is wished for or longed for child. And he suggested the name to my mom because there had been some difficulties before I was born. And it was just kind of an acknowledgement of how much you were wanted in our family. So when I typed in that meaning, that set of meanings, looking for a masculine name that might mean something similar, and Marus came up as an exact equivalent to my dead name. So I thought, oh, that's my name. This is the name that I want. When I converted to Judaism, I picked a Hebrew name that was very feminine.
Yeah.
Ironically, both my dead name and Marus are Hebrew language names, but I wanted a name that was separate because it's part of your values and your identity within Judaism to have something separate. So I chose the name Ruth Yael when I first converted to Judaism. And then earlier this past year, I did a formal renaming ceremony basically at my temple and chose a new name, and I've talked about it a little bit. So when I am called up for religious purposes, I am Reuben, son of Asher and Devita. And in Hebrew that goes Reuben, bar Asher, Devita, when I'm called up for things like that. So, and Reuben is neat because Reuben just means behold a son. So
That's a long last name.
The way Hebrew names are formulated is you have the name that you choose or that your parents choose, but then you are named as a son or a daughter of your parents' names. And if you're a convert, some people will go with Abraham and Sarah as the first Jews, but a lot of people will choose people whose names mean something or who suggest values that are important to them. And there is a lot of thought that went into why I chose those particular names.
So how does that work if you have a family that is not accepting of you and you don't want to be labeled with son or daughter of that family?
Like a Jewish family where the parents aren't accepting?
Well, for example, I grew up Mormon, right? And in the event that someone like me wanted to go join Judaism, but I have a family that isn't accepting, if somebody wanted to go join, do you get to choose a new family name that goes with it?
Yes, that's what I did. My parents are not Jewish. My parents are Christians. My name is based on values and meanings that were important to me. Asher means kind and gentle. Davida is the female form of David and means sacred or blessed. So you put all these things together as somebody who espouses values that I find very masculine and affirming, who's kind, who's gentle, who is artistic and creative, and whose life is sacred and valuable is really where I was going when I chose those names. But if you're a convert, yes, you get to choose who your parents are functionally.
I think that's really beautiful. I don't know why.
I think
I don't know why Daphne's over there just
shit that goes through
losing-
my head.
losing
I
shit.
swear to God. I can't say it. I can't say it.
Well,
You know what?
I mean,
For the
you
purpose
can. You
of
can just
the-
edit it out.
I will edit this out.
Yeah, just edit it out.
I will edit it out.
I like some.
I'm just over here
I
going.
had lots of fun.
I'm just over here going. Daphne, daughter of these nuts. See, the stupid shit pops into my head, and then I.
But you're not wrong.
See, the stupid shit pops into my head, and then I really have to spend some time like managing what I allow to come out or not.
That is what writing dialogue is for. All of the things just come spilling out. I love writing flirtation. I love writing angry fight scenes because things just come out that I didn't know where it was. I didn't
Yeah.
know that was in my head until I looked back 5 lines ago.
I didn't know that was in my head either.
Ooh, I did have a question about things that you have written before. Are you ever the main character in any of your stories, or are all the characters that you have, or are they all just made up and out of creativity, or are you ever like the main character?
That's a great question.
Um, I have one play that is a writer insert done very deliberately about coming to terms with gender. It's called The Planets. It's a really really cool piece. In some ways it's based on there's a very famous piece of classical orchestra work called The Planets. That's sort of based on some of the ideas in that piece of work. But other than that, it is generally considered bad form to insert yourself into the plays that you're writing.
Mm.
Um, I a lot of characters are just figments of imagination, but a lot of characters are also based on composites of people that I've met or read about or heard about. Trying to think, I did a piece a couple of years ago for a very local theater company. We did a 24-hour play festival. It was very, very fun. Everybody meets in this case, it was 7 p.m. on a Friday night. They sent the writers home. We had 10 hours to write a 6-minute play. And then the actors got it, and they had about 10 hours to learn it, memorize it, and then perform it at 7 p.m. the following night.
Jeez.
That
It was a lot.
sounds
It was really, it
sounds
was a
so
lot of
fun.
fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But the characters that I wrote for that play, I had 2 characters. And they were based on the very fundamentalist Christian kids that I went to school with when I was in high school. Uh, which does not sound flattering, but actually was. It actually was. The theater company and the community we were performing in are very conservative, very fundamentalist, and characters rang really true for that audience. Um, and I was told that I had one of the best plays of the night. There were 10 plays that were performed that night,
Great.
and people really, really liked the piece that I wrote. So it sounds really dismissive when I kind of summarize it, the kids that I went to school with, but it was received really, really well. And I think that, or at least I hope that I did a good job of portraying the way kids grow up in those families.
Right on. Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of you have a lot of creativity and a lot of talent, and you're pretty passionate about what you do. I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I like that stuff too.
I bring the queer into religion by going. I used to be Mormon, and now I'm less men.
That's a really good way to put it.
Daphne.
Have you watched the Book of Mormon? Have you watched the
I
musical?
haven't yet. I haven't. I really want to.
It is so good. It is so good. I mean, I think it's funny just because I know musical theater and I love that kind of work. But I've heard from people who were raised Mormon that there's a lot of really subtle inside jokes that you really have
There
to
is.
have
There
real
is.
in the face
There was.
to catch some of the jokes.
There was a. It wasn't a horror movie, but it was almost a thriller
Okay.
that came out within the last year. I'm trying to remember, but it has like female missionary, Mormon missionaries, whatever, and they go knocking on a house and they end up getting trapped in the house. There's an air conditioner there. I gotta watch my hands. I'm gonna be slapping bear over here.
It'd just be another Friday.
Over here. Yeah. Anyway, what was the noise that went with it? Anyway, the point is these female missionaries or sister missionaries, as they're called in the church, right? Is they go over to this house, they knock on it, guy lets them in to go talk about religion, then he ends up locking the door on them and has them trapped, and it gets kind of weird after that, but I don't remember why we were going this way. Oh, yes, there was a lot of subtle inside things that, like, it would happen in the movie, and I would catch it and go, oh, I know what we're talking about right now. And, you know, I'd be either laughing or whatever it was, and they go, what? And I'm like, it's too long to explain what just happened.
Right. Yeah. We can pause the movie and talk for 5 minutes, or we can just keep watching the movie.
So do you find that do you find that in films that feature Judaism where, you know, they're over there like Ramadan dun dun or whatever it is? I don't know.
Oh, yes. I notice it really subtly in a lot of things where they want to code people without being super duper obvious about it.
Yeah.
A really good example in queer cinema is Call Me By Your Name. Both of the main characters are from Jewish families.
Yeah.
And they do it really, really subtly. But if you know what words and what symbols to look for,
right,
it's there. And it just adds a little bit more depth to a story like that.
Yeah.
In one of the musicals I mentioned at the beginning of the recording called Come From Away, there's a really gorgeous scene called Prayer that weaves a Christian melody, a Jewish melody, and a Hindi melody all together, and they're all songs that are talking about desire for peace in the world.
Yeah.
And it's available on YouTube. You can find the clip. It's called Prayer from Come From Away. It's an absolutely, absolutely gorgeous, heartbreaking scene and song.
Yeah.
In that book. But it features a really interesting story. Again, these are all true stories based on something that happened after 9/11, where this older man had lived in this community basically his entire life, knew that he came from a Jewish family, had never practiced as a Jew, and a rabbi was on one of the planes that came into the community, and they had this conversation. He's like, I still remember a few things, but I've never told anybody. You are, not even my wife knows, you are the first person I've told.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous scene. It's not a focus of the play, like musical, really.
Yeah.
It's not a focal point, but it's there, and just it adds. There are other characters and stories that are non-Christian as well that are woven into the entire musical. But it's just one of those moments that feels like everybody is being seen. It's not just the predominant religion, but everybody is being seen, and I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. Marus, if I guess I'm going to ask you are out here producing playwrights and as a poet, is there some place that people can go to check out your work, or if somebody would be interested in producing something along the lines of what you've done, is there some kind of place they can find this?
Yes, I am on. This is for the people who actually are producing and directing, because it does require a subscription to get into it. I am on the New Play Exchange. I am Marus Annette, that's MARUSANET on New Play Exchange. It's also called NPX by people who know what they're talking about.
Okay.
And I am also on Facebook under Studio of Man CO. And man is all capitalized on that. And I post clips of things on there and talk about the poetry that I'm writing and all those kinds of things.
I love that. I love that. Marus, thank you so much for putting up with me.
It's been a morning.
I told you, I slept hardly any last night, and this is what happens when Daphne doesn't sleep.
Well, this was the first time that I've recorded a podcast episode, so it was certainly a little bit of a learning curve and an experience, and it was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Bear, do you want to go ahead and close us out here?
Yeah, we will link
the Facebook page.
Oh my God, yeah. we will link Facebook for Marus if you want to check out their work, and you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We're also on YouTube and Spotify. And if you want
Apple
to,
Podcasts.
and if you want to, be a guest on the podcast, email Daphne@transplantingpodcast.com. Otherwise, you can go check us out at transplantingpodcast.com. We enjoy, reading your emails, and thank you so much, Marus. And thanks
Thank
again.
you.
I thoroughly enjoyed the slam poetry. That was
Yeah.
cool. And you have a lot of
Thank you so
of
much.
creativity and talent, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. And otherwise, hey, thanks the audience for joining us today. And as always, welcome to the family.